The last thing I remember is taking a nap with my wife. What happened after this has been pieced together from stories my wife and others have told me. So I woke up from my nap. I went about our daily routine, went and got a glass of tea, got my wife something to drink, sat down, lit myself a cigarette, and that's when all this started. Later we found out that it was a brain aneurysm on September the 10th of 2007. Now, what's weird about this is I had no clue what was going on. My wife was on the phone with messages and stuff, and she was trying to get through our daily routine, and I started making noises, and she was like, "You need to stop that, you're scaring me." And I'm like, I didn't even realize I was doing anything. And she said, "Randy, you're scaring me, stop." Still no response. She turned and looked at me and knew at once that something was wrong and something that was going on. So she immediately called 911, and the lady got on the line, and she was like, "My husband is having a stroke." And they said, "Is he breathing?" And stuff like that. And she was like, "No, he stopped. Now he started. Now he stopped." And so they're telling her to pick up a 450-pound man and put him on the floor to do CPR on him. And
First miracle about this was the hospital
was about 2 minutes away. The ambulance was like right down the road, and everything just clicked, one right after another. And so they got me to the hospital, and
it was confirmed that you had
it was confirmed that I had a brain aneurysm, and they immediately tried to get me back and breathing, putting the tube down my throat, and
they damaged your throat.
They damaged my throat. That's why I talk a little soft, and my voice is kind of scratchy or whatever. And so they put me in the hospital and put me in the intensive care unit, and they would not give us any chances or any odds or anything like that, because I was not doing good at all. And they told my wife that that the next 48 hours would be
before they could do the surgery.
Would be before they could do any kind of surgery or anything. So they put me in the intensive care unit, and that's where all the stuff started. So the miracles are starting now. My wife said she prayed. She told the Lord that I needed to talk and to recognize her. Then we could make it, because I needed to be able to communicate with her. And at that time I had no communication skills, nothing. All my bodily functions was not working, nothing worked. Amanda is my daughter, and her and my wife walked in there, and I opened my eyes, and my wife said, "Do you know who I am?" And I said, "Wife." And I looked at my daughter and I said, "You have to take care of her." Which that was the first miracle. And then the second miracle. So the second miracle was they went ahead and done the surgery on the second day. And my wife said, "What's the damage?" They put a coil around the aneurysm, And my wife said, what's the damage in me? He said, that's it, I don't understand. I didn't see any damage. And so that was a really weird situation. Because part of my brain blew up. And he said, I just don't understand it, why he's not moving or nothing. Because I don't see no damage. And then I took a turn for the worse. I did not recognize people, started running high fever, infection was all over my body, and they couldn't find where the infection was coming from. They had all kind of antibiotics going through my veins, and nothing they done was helping or nothing. So my wife got on the phone to a church called the First Assembly of God in Fort Wayne, and she knew the pastor there pretty well. And she asked him to get their prayer warriors together and start praying for me that I had an infection in my body and it was running rampage and they couldn't make it stop. And so they got their prayer warriors together. And within hours from the prayer, the fever dropped back down to normal.
Then put on.
So the next miracle was I had a breathing tube in my throat and I couldn't speak to my wife. And in order for me to speak to her, they had to remove the tube out of my throat. And after the surgery, I was not able to breathe on my own. So my wife came in and she heard my daughter and she said, hey, that looks like he's breathing on his own. The nurse walked in about that time and she said, that's because he is breathing on his own and we're right now fixing to take the tube out. They removed the tube from my throat, but still I still could not move my body. And that's a couple of days after this. Here comes the next miracle. She had asked the Lord to help me move my arms or whatever. And she walked in the door, and something inside me said, you can move now. Touch your wife's hand. And I touched her hand, and she was like, wait a minute. Did you just touch my hand? Touch my hand again. Touch my hand again. And I squeezed it again. And she was like, hey, nurse, he squeezed my hand. She said, it doesn't count if you don't squeeze mine. Randy, squeeze my hand. Randy, squeeze my hand. About the third time or fourth time she said it, I finally squeezed her hand. She said, that counts then. He squeezed my hand. The doctor told my wife that every day that I did not move meant there was permanent damage. And this was the second week. So I ended up spending about a month in the intensive care unit. Then they moved me to the 7th floor of the hospital. I remember nothing of that month at all. So when they moved me to the 7th floor, they told me that I could not go to the rehab floor until I could get up off the bed. That I had to be able to sit up on my own for at least 3 hours before I could be moved to rehab floor. And they said that they kept him-humming around, and they finally, the therapist said, we're just going to move him down there and see what we can do for him. Most people who have brain aneurysm, it takes years and years to recover. And I had a therapist named Doug, best person in the world for me. He made me feel comfortable. He made me feel easy with him helping me move and stuff. And I think, for one thing, that's what made me do as good as I did. So I talked to my therapist, Doug, told him I wanted to be out by my wife's birthday. And he said, I don't know about that. And I said, I've got to be out by her birthday. So it was 1 month after they moved me down there that I walked out of the hospital. Doug made me feel very comfortable. He got me up, got me walking, got me moving, got me doing stuff for myself. All my bodily functions come back. Everything was really great. And finally, on October the 31st, I walked out of the hospital. And when I came home, I still had a lot of problems. And my wife had to help me a lot. We didn't realize when I come home that it was going to be that stressful, but it was. But we made it through with constant prayer with God. And she had really, really long hair at that time. And I had right side weakness. And she made me brush her hair every day, 2 or 3 times a day. And that was what brought my arm and stuff back together. I still have a few right side weaknesses, but I walk, I do everything I want to do, pretty much. And that was the end of that story. I give all praises and glory to my God, because they said that nobody heals and recovers in a month's time from a brain aneurysm like I had. And
just want to give God all the glory.
Just give all God to the glory.